Hello everyone. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel to hear more meaningful stories.
The grand estate of the Walker family loomed like a fortress of opulence, perched high on a hill with its towering marble pillars and crystal chandeliers that bathed the halls in a soft golden glow. Every inch of the mansion echoed wealth, refined, untouchable, perfect. Inside, Nathaniel Walker, a 42-year-old self-made millionaire, stood before the hallway mirror, adjusting his tie with practiced precision. He was the epitome of success, every detail of his appearance meticulously crafted to reflect his carefully curated life. His wife, Sarah, glided past him with effortless grace, a silky cream dress sweeping the floor as she sipped orange juice from a crystal flute. "Don't be late for the board meeting," she teased with a smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. Her voice, light and playful on the surface, carried an edge of something he couldn't quite place. Nathaniel chuckled softly, the sound hollow in his ears. But as she moved away, he couldn't shake the nagging feeling that something was wrong. There was a subtle coldness in her tone, a distance he hadn't noticed before, a flicker in the way she turned her head when answering her phone, as though she were hiding something. Yet, he brushed the uneasy thought aside. Grabbing his briefcase, he headed toward the side door, the one his chauffeur always pulled up to. But as he stepped outside, a small figure caught his eye. There, in the shadow of the grand columns, stood a little girl, no older than 6, in a faded gray dress and a tattered white apron. She was barefoot, the soles of her feet dusty against the cold stone steps, and in her hands she gripped a dented metal bucket. She wasn't begging. She wasn't causing trouble. She was simply holding the bucket as if it gave her purpose, as if it were the only thing that anchored her to this world. Jonathan froze. The housekeeper appeared beside him, whispering under her breath, "She shows up now and then. Won't cause trouble. Probably hungry." But the girl wasn't looking at the housekeeper. Her eyes, wide and steady, were fixed on Nathaniel. As he crouched down to meet her gaze, she remained silent for a long moment before finally speaking. "I came to tell you something," she said, her voice barely a whisper, but laced with a strange gravity. Nathaniel's curiosity piqued, his instincts on edge. "What is it?" he asked. She hesitated, glancing nervously over her shoulder before leaning in closer. "Your wife? She's lying to you." Nathaniel's heart skipped a beat, his breath catching in his throat as he stared at the little girl in disbelief. "What did you say?" he asked, the words coming out in a breathless whisper. The girl, Emily, as she had introduced herself, held his gaze without flinching, her eyes unnervingly clear and wise beyond her years. Her hands, small and dirt-streaked, gripped the metal bucket tighter, and she shifted her weight from one foot to the other, as though bracing herself for something heavy. After a moment, she glanced over her shoulder again, her gaze darting nervously toward the distant hedge, then leaned closer to him, her voice barely a murmur. "Last night, I was sleeping behind the garden wall," she said, her words slow and deliberate. "I saw her through the window. She was with a man, not you." The world seemed to tilt as Nathaniel's mind struggled to comprehend what he was hearing. He leaned forward, suddenly gripped by a cold feeling that spread through his chest. "What do you mean?" His voice was low, trembling with a mix of confusion and suspicion. Emily didn't flinch. "They were laughing," she continued, her voice steady now, though her young face held a shadow of something deeper, something far too adult for her age. "She said something about you being gone soon. She said she was almost free." The words hung in the air between them, sharp and unyielding. Nathaniel felt as if the ground beneath his feet had shifted. He searched the girl's face for any sign of mischief, any trace of a lie, but found none. Only the raw sincerity of a child who had seen more than she should ever have to. In the distance, Sarah's laughter rang through the house, a sound that once brought warmth to Nathaniel's heart, now felt hollow, empty. The girl's words echoed in his mind. Almost free. He stood there, unable to move, as if the weight of the truth was too much to bear. "Why are you telling me this?" Nathaniel finally asked, his voice rough with the emotion he couldn't quite contain. Emily met his gaze and with a quiet nod replied, "Because no one believes girls like me. But I see everything." Then, as quickly as she had appeared, she turned and walked away, her bare feet making soft, almost inaudible sounds against the stone path. Nathaniel remained frozen in place. the air thick with uncertainty, the echo of her words haunting him. He had no reason to believe her, no proof, no evidence. But deep down, in the pit of his stomach, something told him that this little girl, with nothing but her truth, had just turned his entire world upside down. That night, Nathaniel lay in bed, unable to shake the girl's words from his mind. The warmth of the sheets felt foreign, as if the very air around him had grown cold. His thoughts were consumed with Emily's haunting revelation. He had never been the type to question his wife, the woman he had loved for years, the woman who had stood beside him through every triumph. But now, everything felt different. The smile he had once trusted, the laughter that had always made him feel safe, it all seemed like a facade, a carefully crafted illusion hiding something darker. He couldn't sleep. His mind raced, turning over every detail of the past few months, every moment that now felt off, every glance Sarah had given him that now seemed to carry a hidden meaning. She said she was almost free. The words echoed in his mind, a rhythmic reminder of the betrayal that had been lurking in the shadows. Finally, he couldn't take it anymore. He got up, his footsteps heavy in the silent house, and made his way to the study. The dim light of the desk lamp cast long shadows across the room as Nathaniel sat at the computer and began to log into the estate's private surveillance server. He had never once thought to check the cameras, never felt the need to. He had trusted his home, his staff, and most of all, he had trusted Sarah. But now, every ounce of that trust was crumbling before his eyes. His hands hovered over the mouse as he accessed the encrypted footage, his heart pounding with a sense of impending doom. He'd never watched the garden wing cameras before, but now he had to. The footage rewound, playing in slow motion as he searched for something, anything, to prove that Emily was wrong. And then he saw it. There, in the dead of night, at 1:47 a.m., Sarah slipped down the hallway in a silk robe, her hair pinned up, her movements quiet but deliberate. Nathaniel leaned in closer, his breath caught in his throat. Behind her was Edward Crane, his business partner. They weren't strangers. They had shared business meetings, mutual respect. But now, seeing them together in this setting, something inside him twisted. The footage showed them moving into the solarium, their bodies close, their touches subtle but intimate. Nathaniel's stomach churned as he heard the soft sound of their laughter, the murmurs of their conversation. And then, Sarah's voice, clear and undeniable. "He's almost done. He's been moving funds into the Zurich account. Soon, we won't need him at all." The world stopped spinning. Nathaniel's hands went numb, his mind a whirlwind of shock and disbelief. It wasn't just infidelity. It was a betrayal that ran far deeper, one that threatened to destroy everything he had worked for, everything he had built. His hands shook as he backed away from the computer screen, his mind struggling to process what he had just seen. The woman he had loved, the woman he had trusted, was not just lying to him. She was plotting against him, tearing apart the foundation of their life together. The cold realization hit him like a physical blow. His world had just shattered, and there was no turning back. The next morning, Nathaniel didn't go to the boardroom. He didn't step into his car. Instead, he stood in the study, the darkened room mirroring the heaviness in his chest. The house was eerily silent, the calm before the storm. He dialed his lawyer's number, his voice cold and measured as he instructed him to freeze all his accounts and prepare for what was coming. The rest of the day blurred in a haze of urgency and betrayal. Nathaniel's hands trembled as he contacted his IT team, demanding that they trace every digital footprint Sarah had left behind. Every email, every contract, every call. The hours felt like days, each second stretching in the weight of the truth he was uncovering. By evening, the evidence was irrefutable. She had forged documents, manipulated signatures, and had already begun the process of transferring funds into offshore accounts. Nathaniel stared at the screen, the list of transactions scrolling in front of him like a countdown to his downfall. It was a slow-motion train wreck, and he had no choice but to watch it all unfold. But it wasn't just about money. This was about everything he had believed in, everything he had given to Sarah. The life they had built, the future they had planned, it was all a lie. And now, he was standing in the ruins of that lie. The doorbell rang, snapping him back to reality. Sarah was home. She had no idea what was coming. When she walked in, her smile faltered slightly at the sight of him standing in the hallway. but she masked it quickly with that practiced grace she always wore so well. She didn't know it yet, but this was the moment everything would change. Nathaniel didn't say a word. He simply handed her a folder, thick with the damning evidence of her betrayal. No accusations, no anger, just the cold weight of truth. She looked at the papers, her face frozen for a moment, her breath hitching in her throat. "What is this?" she asked, her voice tinged with disbelief. Nathaniel's voice was calm, low, and steady as he replied, "We're done. The bank accounts are locked. The board's been notified. The prenup will be honored." For the first time in their marriage, Sarah was speechless. Her eyes flickered with confusion, then panic. But Nathaniel's face was a mask of quiet resolve. "You lied to me," he said softly. "But a little girl with nothing saw what I refused to." The words hung in the air, and for a long moment, neither of them moved. Then, without another word, Sarah dropped her eyes to the floor. The silence between them stretched, suffocating. The woman who had once been his everything was now a stranger. The woman he had loved had chosen betrayal, and Nathaniel had finally seen her for who she truly was. The next morning, Sarah was gone. Her things had been removed from the estate, her name erased from all financial documents, as if she had never existed. But Nathaniel wasn't thinking about the fortune he had saved. His mind was consumed with the memory of Emily, the little girl who had spoken the truth when no one else would. As the emptiness of the house closed in around him, Nathaniel realized that it wasn't just money he had lost. It was a future, a life he had imagined with someone who never truly shared it with him. Nathaniel couldn't shake the feeling that something was missing, something he had overlooked amidst the chaos of betrayal and loss. His thoughts kept drifting back to Emily, the girl who had, without any reason to, stepped into his life and shattered the illusions he had built. She had seen something he couldn't, and now, even after all the storm that had passed, she lingered in his mind, an unshakable presence. He needed to find her. He couldn't let her slip away into the shadows of the world that had already abandoned her. His search began that afternoon, a relentless hunt through the corners of the town. His staff combed the streets, the alleys, and the local shelter, but there was no sign of her. Days passed. He checked the markets, the train stations, and even the forgotten corners of town where lost souls gathered. It wasn't until the fourth day, as the sun dipped low in the sky, casting the town in a golden haze, that they found her, behind the bakery, curled up in a cardboard nook. There she was, as still and silent as he remembered, clutching her metal bucket as if it were a lifeline. Nathaniel's heart pounded in his chest as he approached. This was the moment he had been waiting for. He knelt down in front of her, the soft sounds of the town around them fading into nothing. Emily looked up, her eyes wide, unsure of what to expect. She didn't flinch when he spoke. "You saved me," he said quietly, the weight of his words hanging in the air. She didn't answer, her small face unreadable, but Nathaniel didn't need her to. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a delicate gold necklace, simple yet meaningful, with a single word engraved on it, "Seen." He placed it gently around her neck, his hands steady despite the turmoil inside him. "You're coming with me now, if you want to," he said softly, extending his hand to her. There was a moment of hesitation, a flicker of doubt in her eyes, but then, slowly, she reached out and took his hand. They drove back to the estate, the car humming through the streets as the weight of the world seemed to shift. When they arrived, Nathaniel didn't usher her into a guest room or provide her with just a place to stay. No, he gave her something far more precious, a home. He gave her warmth, a bed of her own, clothes, and tutors to guide her through a world she had never known. But more than that, he gave her something he had never given anyone else, his time. He listened to her. Emily, who once felt invisible, was now seen. She told him about the stars she loved, about the planets she could name, about the things that made her smile, like lemons and running barefoot in the grass. For the first time in her life, she wasn't just surviving, she was living. Months passed, and Nathaniel's heart, once shattered and cold, slowly began to heal. Emily became part of his world, but more than that, she became his world. She had saved him in ways he had never imagined, and now he would spend the rest of his life giving her everything she deserved. The day the adoption papers were signed, Nathaniel stood in the garden, holding a glass of champagne as friends and guests toasted to the girl who had changed everything. He raised his glass and spoke with a voice full of gratitude and love. "The world saw her as small," he said, his eyes on Emily as she smiled at him. "But she saw what no one else could. She gave me truth, and I will spend the rest of my life giving her back everything she was owed." In that moment, Nathaniel knew that Emily was the greatest gift he had ever received. The days turned into weeks, and the Walker estate, once a cold, empty shell of wealth and secrecy, began to feel like a home. Nathaniel watched as Emily transformed before his eyes, shedding the weight of the world she had carried alone for so long. She no longer seemed like the quiet, withdrawn girl who had once wandered the streets, lost in a world of forgotten corners. Now she was full of light. Her laughter echoed through the halls. Her small fingers traced constellations on the walls, and her dreams stretched across the stars she loved so much. Nathaniel had given her everything she needed, but it was clear now that what she truly craved was not material wealth, but something far more priceless: love, attention, and the security of knowing she was finally seen. Each evening, they would sit together in the library, the soft glow of the fire casting dancing shadows on the walls. Nathaniel would listen as Emily spoke of the worlds she had created in her mind, worlds filled with glowing suns, planets with smiling faces, and gardens where the flowers never wilted. He reveled in the sound of her voice, the way she lit up when she talked about the simplest things: her favorite books, the scent of fresh lemons, the way the grass felt cool against her bare feet. For the first time, Nathaniel wasn't just a millionaire with a gilded cage. He was a father. He was someone who could give her the life she deserved, the life that had been stolen from her for so long. The change in Emily was striking. Her eyes, once shadowed with the sadness of a life too harsh for one so young, were now wide with curiosity, wonder, and the joy of a childhood she had never known. Nathaniel wasn't just providing for her. He was giving her back the years that had been taken from her. He could see it in the way she now ran through the gardens. And kept barefoot and free, her face lit up with a smile that was all hers, untainted by the harshness of the world. As months passed, Emily's transformation became even more profound. She was no longer the quiet girl who spoke in whispers. She was a child, an actual child, full of energy, questions, and an endless thirst for learning. Nathaniel took her to the best schools, introduced her to tutors who nurtured her natural brilliance, and watched with pride as she flourished. The woman who had once been the light of his life, Sarah, seemed like a distant memory now, as if she had never truly mattered. His world had shifted, and now his heart was centered on Emily, the girl who had opened his eyes to the truth, to the love he had never expected. The day came when Nathaniel stood in the grand garden, the place where everything had changed. Emily stood beside him, her hand in his, the smile on her face brighter than any of the priceless jewels in the estate. The adoption papers were signed, and Emily Wexford, no longer just a girl who had seen the truth, was now a daughter in every sense of the word. Nathaniel raised his glass to the guests gathered around, the sound of clinking crystal filling the air. "The world saw her as small," he said, his voice steady and full of conviction. "But she saw what no one else could. She gave me truth, and now I will spend the rest of my life giving her everything she was owed." And in that moment, as Emily's laughter rang out across the estate, Nathaniel realized that everything he had lost, his fortune, his marriage, had led him to this moment, to Emily. She had saved him in ways he could never explain, and now it was his turn to save her, to give her everything she deserved, and more. The story of Emily's courage spread like wildfire, capturing the hearts of everyone who heard it. Nathaniel couldn't help but feel a sense of wonder every time someone would tell him how incredible it was that a girl so small, with so little, could make such a monumental difference. But to him, it was more than that. It wasn't just about saving his fortune or exposing a betrayal. It was about rediscovering something he had long forgotten: what it truly meant to be seen, to be loved without conditions. Emily had given him that. She had given him the truth he had buried so deep, the truth he had refused to face until she had forced him to look. But the world wasn't done with Emily. Nathaniel knew that. The weight of their pasts was not something that could be easily erased. The world had looked at her and seen only a homeless child, invisible and broken. But now, as she stood by his side, as his daughter, she had become a force, a shining star in a world that had once cast her aside. Emily's past would never define her, Nathaniel promised himself. He would give her every chance to be more than the sum of the circumstances that had once bound her. As Emily grew older, the bond between them deepened. Nathaniel no longer saw her as just the girl who had saved him. He saw her as his own flesh and blood. She wasn't the child he had expected to save, but the child he had needed to find. And now, with every step she took into the future, he knew his role had changed. He was no longer a man guarding his empire. He was a father, fiercely protective of the daughter who had not only changed his life, but had helped him rediscover the beauty of the world. He had given her a future, but she had given him back his soul. The adoption ceremony was a blur of laughter, tears, and raised glasses. But Nathaniel's mind was far away, caught in the moment of perfect clarity. As the guests toasted the miracle that was Emily, Nathaniel raised his own glass. He looked at the girl who had taught him more about life, love, and truth than anyone else ever could. The world saw her as small, he said, his voice steady, his heart full, but she saw what no one else could. She gave me truth, and I will spend the rest of my life giving her back everything she was owed. And in that moment, as the sun set behind them, casting a golden glow over the estate, Nathaniel knew that this was the beginning of something far more profound than any riches or accomplishments. This was family. This was love. And for the first time in his life, he understood that everything he had ever needed was right there, standing beside him, in the form of a girl who had saved him, not just from the betrayal that had torn his world apart, but from the emptiness of living without real connection. Emily had shown him what it meant to truly live, and now nothing would ever break the bond they shared. This story reminds us that true value lies not in wealth or appearances, but in the honesty and courage found in unexpected places. Emily, a homeless girl, changed Nathaniel's life by revealing a truth he had ignored. Sometimes, the most profound changes come when we choose to see beyond the surface and act with compassion. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to like and subscribe for more emotional, heartwarming tales. Let us know in the comments how you feel about the power of truth and second chances. We'd love to hear your thoughts.